I need to know everything, who and the what and the where, I need everything. Trust me, I hear what you're saying, but act like it's new what you're telling me. I'm curious, George, I hop in the Porsche, 5 and a horse, I'm ready for war, I'm coming for throats, to turn to a ghost, I need to know everything. Now you be surprised at the info you get is by letting them talk, so I'm letting them talk. Gotta keep quiet, maneuver in silence to let them in, chalk up their body, another one body, that's just how it goes.
Hello and welcome to JK+1. I am not your host, PTF. He's, I don't know, he's actually, I'm going to go off script a little bit here when I normally make fun of him. Sadly enough, I hate to announce it first, but hopefully Pete won't mind. Muggsy, the handicapping Labrador, has gone on to her next life, and so I think he's dealing with that today. So if you hear this, make sure you give him condolences for the greatest handicapping Labrador in the history of the world, Muggsy. I am your host, Jonathan Kinchin, and I wasn't planning on giving you that sad news, but it happened. I didn't feel right making fun of Pete after such a tough situation. On a greater note, on a higher note, on a happier note, I have literally, you hear me talk about it 3 or 4 times, full fanboy experience for me. The most influential person in racing, you know, that obviously didn't, not that this person helped me professionally, but just influential in my love for this game, and influential in so many aspects of my life that I didn't even realize until I started talking about it on the show today. Hall of Famer Mike Smith is with us today on JK+1, and it was fun. It was a fun hour and change, and we talked about Zenyatta. We talked about Songbird, Gary Stevens. We talked about New York, Cigar, Bill Mott, Shug. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, and we talk about, obviously, being Derby week, we talk about a lot of his Derby situations. We talk about his first Derby. We talk about his last Derby. We talk about his third Derby win, which I'll let him explain to you. But it was a pleasure to sit down with Mike. I want to thank our friends at Qatar Racing for their continued support, the continued support of this podcast, and allowing us to do stuff like this, to do stuff with Mike Smith, with Angel Cordero, with it's a dream come true for me, and I hope that you guys are enjoying the content as well. I'm going to shut up, and I'm going to get to Money Mike, and I hope you guys will enjoy it as much as I enjoyed recording it. Mike, I got to tell you, this is kind of a surreal moment for me. Like, I mean, obviously we've become friends, and that's weird in its own right, because of all the people that I've come across in this game since I've gotten involved, you were kind of the one that was on the highest pedestal for me when I was just a fan, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Oh man, well, thank you. Appreciate that. No, heck, it's been great getting to know you as well, man. It's been fun, man. You're fun to hang out with as well.
Well, Mike, let's get started. I'm going to get started selfishly, not where you got started, but I'm going to kind of just tell you a quick story, and then you'll know exactly where I'm going. But the people always ask me, how did you get into the game? Because I didn't obviously grow up in racing. And the answer I always tell them is that when I was in college at the University of Texas, I had $100 to bet. I drove over to Maynard Downs, which is like right outside of Austin, Texas. And I bet like $85 worth of exactas and all kinds of stuff with Curlin and all these other things. Not Curlin, excuse me, with a Fleet Alex. And I had $15 left over, and I remember my dad's friend who's since passed, and I didn't realize at the time, I thought he was like kind of my mentor. I didn't realize that he was more of a feel guy than a pen and pencil guy. And he told me that he liked Giacomo. And I just remember, I was like, well, let me just bet 5 across the board on Giacomo. I'm a college student. We go back to our friend's house who's having a crawfish boil, and the rest was history. I won, $600 that day. I bought a keg of beer, And then that night I got on Amazon and I ordered 4 handicapping books, and that's where it started. Your ride on the 10 horse, a son of Holy Bull, which we'll get to in a little while, but it was also your first Derby. What does Giacomo mean to you?
Well, yeah, man, I tell you, of course, it's your first Derby, and he was 50-1, and but I like your mentor, man. I really thought that he had a chance to run really well. To win it, I look, I think things had to work out for him to win it, but it looked like on paper that it could. All the top horses were on the East Coast that year, and they all kind of had the same running style. So I knew it was going to be a really quick pace in the Derby, and it could really set up for him. He'd been out here on the West Coast where at the times the tracks were a lot faster, and he always finished real good, but I just didn't quite get there. But he was always the one that was running the best at the end. So I really thought he had a sneaky good chance to run extremely well. And of course we pulled it off. And it's when you win the Derby, especially for the first time, it's life changing, man. It's what we all dream about in this sport. Whether you're a jockey, a trainer, an owner, a groom, an exercise rider, a hot walker, man, you want your horse to win the Derby. That's what it's all about. So when you're blessed to pull it off, man, it truly is. It's life changing.
You had ridden some short price horses prior to that. Look, I mean, did it start to get to a point in your career where you were like, shit, man, this might not happen for me? There's a chance that I'm going to win all these races and I'm going to be in the Hall of Fame and I might not win a Kentucky Derby. Or did you know that you had one out there with your name on it?
I've always felt that I was going to win 3 Derbies and 2 Triple Crowns. Don't ask me why, where that comes from, man. It's just something that I've always thought. So I was certainly praying that one was out there for me. I thought there was, but you're right. I was given some really good opportunities and came really close. It finished second a few times, and it's just such a hard race to win. And you see some of the greatest riders in of our times or in this sport period, that might not even won a Derby, and if they did, some of them only win one. If you're blessed to win more than one, well, you've done really well, because that's how hard it is to win. And you got to be on the right horse at the right time, and especially in these 20 horse fields, you got to get a trip especially when you come back from far out of it. As Giacomo came from out of it, I think last at one point. But when it's meant to be, everything just seems to open up at the right time, and it's your turn.
Mike, I mean, at this point of your career, and I look, I don't know if this is a sensitive question or but I'm going to go. Do you, a week like this where, you don't have a Derby mount, are you okay with that at this point of your career? Because you've been there, you've done that, or is there still a level of disappointment? I mean, obviously just some bad luck here and there with some horses, but how are you disappointed? Or are you content at this point of your career?
Look, I mean, I certainly want to go in with a chance. So if I wasn't going in, on a horse that was liable, I don't want to ride it just to ride it, of course, but like I told you, starting the show off, man, I'm intimate. I'm supposed to win 3, so I've only gotten 2, but. So I want to go another. I'm gonna ride another year. I feel so good right now, Jonathan, that I want to ride another year or 2 and give it another really good shot. Early on in the year, I thought I had a really nice 3-year-old that could take me there, and he just didn't quite make it this year. But a lot of new babies coming around, and we're gonna see if we can get there. But yeah, it's disappointing. But look, I don't want to go just to go, but I want to go and give it a really good shot.
Mike, when I do this show, I text people around the person I'm doing the show with to kind of get them to help me with some stories. And your brother helped me out with a couple of good ones to kind of set you up with. So Prairie Bayou, tell me a little bit about your experience with Prairie Bayou.
Man, he was just a blue-collar horse. He was the kind of horse that just showed up to work every day. Never did nothing wrong. Up until the day he got hurt. Jonathan, I think he was first and second in every single race that he ever ran. He either finished first or second. until he got hurt. He was just that consistent. He was the kindest horse you'd ever that I had ever been around. There were times I'd walk by his stall when I'd go to visit him, and he liked to lay down a lot. He would even lay down outside when he was grazing, and you could just crawl all over the top of him like a little kid, and he wouldn't move. It was just a really, really cool and kind horse, and meant the world to me. And I actually thought that he would have won. He would have won the Derby. We finished a really good second, but Sea Hero with Jerry Bailey that day just fired a race that he had never fired before and never did after. Because we came back and we won the Preakness in pretty good fashion, and I thought he would have had a good chance to win the Belmont if all didn't go wrong.
Mike, we talked about it a little bit at the top with Giacomo, but being a son of Holy Bull, Holy Bull, it's still, when I watched those videos, I was obviously, I was young. I was too young then to have really appreciated it. But like looking at those races now, I mean, what a special horse he was.
Oh yeah, he'll always go down as my all-time favorite. He was a horse, Jonathan, that took my career to the next level. He really did. He was a horse that taught me how to ride good horses. There's a difference to riding your everyday kind of claimer or allowance horse to riding a horse of that caliber. They're a loaded gun, and there's something you don't mess with, man. You even think about pulling the trigger, and they're gone, and next thing you know, you've done too much too soon, and or they teach you to have a lot of confidence and to learn to be patient as well. Good horses, like him anyway. He taught me how to ride those kind of horses, and he'll always have a special place in my heart. He was, people say, what was he like? Well, he was just like his name, man. He was holy, but he was a bull, and he was he was the toughest horse you ever seen, but there was something about him that was just so special.
How about that Travers? Did you think you had it? Were you nervous? Did you know you were going that? Did you quick? What was your thoughts that day?
Well, I knew I felt I was on the best horse, going in on the race, and Holy Bull had been doing a lot of his running on the front end, and I knew there was going to come a time where people were going to start putting somebody, Rabbit in there to press him, to press the pace. And sure enough, what Lucas put a sprinter in there to make sure that we went really quick. And I tried to let the sprinter go ahead and do, but then the bull just wanted to take it to him. At the time, he was still pretty aggressive early on in his career, and man, he just wanted to go with him. But the thing about him is it's not only was he just so talented, he had stamina that was crazy. I mean, this is a horse that could win from 6 furlongs to 1.25 miles, and he chose not to give up that day. I mean, Concern came at him with a full head of steam, and actually probably got in front of me there just for a little bit, but once he switched to his right lead heading for home, he dug back in, and he wasn't going to let him by if we went around again.
Mike, one of my favorite horses that you rode, this was when I finally realized that outside of the Giacomo, I consider that one lucky because someone basically told me about that horse. But Bodemeister was one of the derbies that I went to where I honed in on Bodemeister, and I felt like I have the best horse. And when they turned for home at the 8th pole, I thought, oh my God, I as a horse player, I've nailed my first Derby winner on my own. When you turned for home, did you think you were there?
Oh, without a doubt. Man, I just, we had to go a little quick early. I'm sure that hurt us some, but that was what was made him so good, though, was that he had that high early cruising speed, and yet he could keep running. But I thought I had it won for sure, and I believe I'll have another that nailed me there the last 50 yards of the race. But then we got over to Pimlico, and I thought, well, it's not near as much pace in the race this time. I'll turn the tables on him, and was able to go at a much easier pace and everything else, and he got me even easier. So maybe I should have used the same tactics that we did in the Derby, and maybe I ought to beat him at some point. But at the time, I'll have another was just running. He was just running races that were just right on. He was just the Now horse, and it was too bad because Bodemeister at the time was and still was. I mean, it always will go. Was probably one of the best milers I've been on. It was just that extra part that would get to him, you know.
Yeah, Mike, it's funny. Bodemeister, and it was a combination of Bodemeister, but mostly Game On Dude and you, who taught me and kind of formed my style as a handicapper and a horse player, about the importance of speed, and not that 49 to the half speed. Really, Game On Dude taught me that 49 to the half thing didn't work for horses like that. Didn't work for horses like American Pharoah either. It was the faster they were going, the more of a weapon that they were using. That's why I think I handicap turf sprint so well, because I find the speed horse, and more often than not, the speed of the speed wins those types of races. Did it take you a long time throughout your career to kind of figure that out? I'm sure Holy Bull had a lot to do with that.
Yeah, again, that's what I was talking about. He taught me how to ride those kind of horses that had that high cruising speed. And you know, early on in my career, of course, you always wanted to go as easy as you could the first part. Everyone would, you'd get a 2-length advantage or a 3-length advantage, and you would just grab a hold of them and slow them down to go the first quarter in 24, thinking that was going to save energy, you know, and you were going to have that much more left at the end. Well, a lot of times that's not the case, you know. If you can get a horse to do that with finesse and not pulling against them, then it would help you. But I just learned early on, and getting the opportunity to ride, against the guys that came before me, man, that it was some of the greatest riders of all time. But I was a big fan of Pat Days, and used to watch how he could just get horses, you know, just watch Wild Again, you know, the first Breeders' Cup Classic. I mean, here's a guy that wasn't no slow fractions, but it showed you that, you know, that high cruising speed is dangerous, and you get a horse into a real comfortable rhythm, and as long as they're breathing right, man, they'll carry that speed for a long ways. And what happens is those closers have to try to move early into it to try and get to you, and then they don't have a kick at the end, and you're able to, you know, to outlast them. And just kind of learned that early on, and learned just not. The more I fought with, I never did get much out of a horse when I took a strong hold of them. When I turned them loose, they just never really gave me what I thought I should have. And I learned that finesse worked a whole lot better. And if you can let a horse that has a high cruising speed use it to his advantage, it's dangerous, man. It's you know, you'll take them closers out of their game quick.
Mike, we a couple weeks ago we had Angel Cordero on for a couple of hours and just telling some of his wild stories. But I want to talk a little bit about your time in New York, because the Mike Smith that I know, the Mike Smith that I followed, was California Mike Smith. I never knew New York Mike Smith, so I want to talk to you about that. But before we get into that, riding with Angel, what was that like? I've heard he was a very tricky guy to ride with.
He's very smart, you know. A lot of people talk about Angel, how like he was you know, like a dirty rider or something. He didn't ride. I mean, he was a really smart rider, man. He rode. I mean, he'd hold you in and do things like that, but just you were the horse to beat, you know. And he knew who the horses were to beat, and he knew what he needed to do to get the job done when he went on the best horse. But he was just brilliant to watch. I loved riding with him, man. I really did. Learned a lot from him, and just getting the opportunity to be able to hang around him in the jocks room and at his house sometimes and pick his brain was just, as a young guy growing up, you know, I always tell everybody, they say, who do you patent your style off of? And I just always tell everybody, I got a little bit of all those guys in me, man. A little of Pat Day, a little of Angel, a little of Chris McCarron, a little Gary Bailey, a little, you know, Cito, a little this guy, a little that guy, Lafitte. I just all of them into one. You know, it was amazing watching those guys, how talented they all were. So it was fun coming up in New York around that time. There was some great riders, man. I mean, old and young, man. There were some, as there was out here in California. I mean, it was a crazy generation of riders that I don't know if we'll ever see again. The generation before me, it was great to be able to learn from them.
Mike, I asked Angel this the other day. Do you feel like, you know, the 90s were safer than now, or do you feel like now is safer than the 90s? in terms of the way that you guys, the way that you guys, you know, how the room kind of takes care of each other and all of that?
Oh, it's hard. That's a good question, man. It's hard to say. There was just certain rules you followed back then in the '90s, man. There was not just because a guy was off the fence a little bit didn't mean you drove up in there. As far off the fence as he was, that was where the rail was. You had to be careful back then getting through. Whereas nowadays, you get through a lot easier than you used to because people just ride so much harder. I mean, they come off that turn riding a whole lot harder, and once they've gotten going, they maintain a straighter course. Where back in the old days, if you try to get down in there, more than likely you're gonna pay for it. So I would say it's a little bit tougher, kind of like the NBA, man. There was a whole lot more. You had to be. There was more checking and bumping and and stuff like that there is nowadays. At least out here in California, anyway. I'm not sure. I don't go to New York as often as I used to to ride every day and see how it is there. But it was just I don't know. I think it was a little bit tougher to ride back in the '90s than it would be nowadays.
What took you to New York, Mike? I mean, you grew up in New Mexico. What took you to New York and got you in the barns with Suge and all of that?
Riding in the Midwest and in Kentucky. I started out in New Mexico, and then it led me to Hot Springs, and then from Hot Springs, you could go into Nebraska, you could go into Chicago, and then after that, you'd go into Kingland and Churchill, and just riding that circuit gave me the opportunity to ride for. I rode my first Derby for Suge McGahee in 1984. I think I was 18 years old. I rode a horse called Pine Circle for Suge. That's how far back I go with him, and with Billy Mott as well. I started riding for Billy probably when I was 17, 18 years old as well, and then me and Todd Pletcher kind of grew up together. I've known Todd since I was 16, and I went to Louisiana just for a little learning break, a little 2-month education on watching them riders over there, and JJ, Todd's father, guy, at the time had horses in New Mexico, so he kind of helped out all the young New Mexico riders, and got to hang out with Todd when we were the same age. We were 16 back then. So when that whole crew, when Suge got the job with the Phipps, and then when Billy and them started going into New York, well, I just joined along with them, man.
What and I mean, you had some success. I mean, you had a lot of success in New York. What was the reason for moving to California?
I got hurt really bad in 1998. I went down in a spill there at Saratoga and broke my back, and was out for about 7 to 8 months, I guess it was, Jonathan, and came back way too soon, man. My back was not ready, to come back and start riding 6, 7, 8, 9 a day. And of course, I jumped right into it and realized that I wasn't able to. So I had to cut way back. Try to pick and choose a whole lot more, and they just weren't winning right off the bat, and so things kind of went south there for a little bit, and I didn't want to leave not doing well, and I hired a new agent at the time and said, just to come into New York, I'm feeling a lot better. I'm ready to start riding a little more. Let's see if we can get my business going here, and then I'll go back to California with you. I hired a guy out of California. His name is Brian Beach. And he wanted me to come out to California, not to stay in New York. I said, I'll do it, but I got to get going in New York before we do that. And we did well. He came out, and we were second leading rider that winter meet in Florida. Just got beat for leading rider, and we came back into New York, and we finished the Belmont meet third leading rider. And I thought, okay, that's good enough. Let's go give it a shot, man. And just looking for something new. Was blessed to have had a great career there in New York, and just looking to I always thought California was a place I'd like to try and like to be, and it's closer to home. So we came out here, and I remember talking to Suge McGahee about it. He said, "Look, Mike, you're just one good horse away from being right back to where you were, man. Just go out there and just go find that one." And it's funny, Jonathan. I came out and I by the grace of God, really, I found a filly called a Zeri, and that's what started me getting rolling in California. Was that mare, a Zeri? She went on to win the Breeders' Cup, and I think I won like 14 or 15 in a row on her. I mean, she was some mare, and that's what got me rolling. And then getting the opportunity to ride for John Sherriffs, and of course, things took off there, and we just had a great career. And then getting in with Bob, and then me and Bob went on a run that was kind of unheard of there for a while, man. I mean, I was probably winning at 75%, and most of them were grade ones at the time. So I was blessed to have had a Hall of Fame career in New York, and I feel like I've had one out here in California as well. So I've gotten to taste the best of both sides, and I got to ride with everybody before they retired. With Cordero and George Velasquez and Jacinto and Bailey and everybody, back in the East Coast, and then getting to come out here and to ride with Eddie D and Lafitte and Chris McCarron and Stevens, everybody out here before they all retired. So I got the best of both worlds, man.
Mike, if you could sleep in your bed, that night, where would you like to ride 9 at on a Saturday? Anywhere in the world, you ride 9, but you get to teleport to your bed. Where would you like to ride those 9?
Wow. I've never been a guy that really mattered where I was at. It was a matter of, was I on 9 favorites, wherever that would be, man. Man, that could be in Minnesota, Canterbury Downs, man. As long as I was on 9 favorites, that's where I wanted to be. It didn't matter where I was at. I didn't have to have a track, I'd run on all surfaces, man. I like riding good horses. I still do.
1995, the Breeders' Cup. What's the Black Eye story?
Well, I got in a little wrestling match a couple of days out. Gary Stevens happened to come in town a little early, and we got a little old fashioned wrestling match, and we told everybody it was racquetball, but he landed on my nose and broke my nose. But I was fine. It was just my nose. I was okay, man. I had a great Breeders' Cup that day.
You and Gary, your relationship, I think it kind of got it seemed to kind of get magnified with the Songbird Beholder deal, but you guys,
we've been close for a long time, and he's like my big brother. We're really, really close. I look up to him so much. I just, not only is he one of the greatest riders of all time, he's just he's been a great friend, of really, really close friend of mine. I mean, we're literally like brothers.
He told me to ask you about his whip after the Arkansas Derby when he won on Tank's Prospect.
Yeah, I asked him. I knew his brother first. Scott was riding there in Hot Springs, and was excited about Gary coming in and getting to meet him. He was doing really well out in California at the time, and I was getting married that night to Patrice Lively, and I asked him if he'd come to my wedding, and if he wasn't doing anything after the race, he said, "Sure, I will. I'll come to your wedding. You're getting married. Yeah, it's going to be right here. Just come to the reception. Is what I was telling him to do." And of course, after he won the Arkansas Derby, I said, that'd be a really nice wedding present. He was to give me that your riding crop, man. I really appreciate that. He said, "Man, that's like asking a baseball player to give you his favorite bat that he bat." I said, "Well, anyway, he wound up giving it to me, and I still have it. I still have that riding crop, man."
Oh, that's unbelievable. He said that he told me to ask you if Eddie Delahousse and him opened the bar back up.
Well, Eddie came. Eddie was at the time a real close friend of my father-in-law, my future father-in-law. Then at the time, John Lively, who was a really good rider. Matter of fact, he won the Preakness on a horse called Elocutionist. I don't know if you'll have to look that one up. It was really, really a great race. But John was a great rider in the Midwest, did really, really well. And him and Eddie were close friends. And so they came to the reception. Eddie came to this reception as well. And it is getting over kind of early. And I remember Gary and Eddie, and I said, well, the open bars are already kind of closed. Kind of people are kind of leaving and whatever. And so Gary and I said, I don't have enough money to keep it open. So Gary and Eddie took care of it, man. They kept that open bar as long as anyone wanted to stay. They kept it open for me.
Why did you give up Thunder Gulch in the 95 Derby?
It's stupid. I should have. Well, Talking Man was a really good horse, Roger Atfield. I mean, he really was. But the only place he wasn't exceptionally well was at Churchill, and I should have known that because he ran there as a 2-year-old in the juvenile. I rode him. He finished third, but he didn't handle that track. If it had been any other racetrack, he probably would have won that race, and maybe even the Derby if it was at another track. But he just didn't get over Churchill that well, and we forgot about that. Me and my agent at the time, Steve Adika, forgot about it. And Thunder Gulch ran in the bluegrass, and Talking Man ran in the wood. And I didn't get to ride either one of them because I was committed to Concern at the time. And he was going to run at Oaklawn, the Oaklawn Park Handicap against Cigar. But I got to choose even after the win, lose, or draw, even after the bluegrass or the wood, I'd get to choose, which horse to ride. Well, Thunder Gulch didn't run that well in the bluegrass that day, and Talking Man wins the wood by 12. So my agent just felt that was the way we should go, and I thought so as well. I mean, here's the horse just won by 12. I mean, literally under wraps, and Thunder Gulch just kind of ran a very disappointing fourth, I think it was. But just not remembering that or putting into play that Talking Man didn't run that well the year before over at Churchill. I actually still made the lead heading for home, and then Thunder Gulch passed me with those orange and blue silks and that orange dot on the back, and I said, oh man. It took off. I think Gary was riding in Japan or somewhere at the time, and I talked him into coming in to ride him.
I think Gary told me that story when I had the podcast with him, or maybe it was Ron Anderson told me.
Yeah, I talked Gary because Gary didn't want to come back, and he said, well, why did he run so bad in the bluegrass? And I said there was no apparent reason. He just didn't fire. But I know if he'll run his race like he did I said I'm not going to tell you he'll win, but he'll run good because he's a fighting little horse, man. I mean, he won the Fountain of Youth and the bluegrass and the Florida Derby. I said he beat just about everybody there is to beat in the Derby already. So why wouldn't you give him a chance other than Talking Man? And I think I'm going to win it, but I think you could finish second. Well, it was the other way around. He won it, and I don't even know if I didn't even finish second, maybe not even third. I don't even remember where I finished.
In 96 with Unbridled Song, you had to wear a boot, or were you injured?
No, it wasn't me. Unbridled Song was injured.
Oh,
he ran.
Okay.
Yeah, he had to run with 2 bar shoes on, egg bar shoes. So he literally had he had a quarter cracked abscess, and it popped just before the race. And he had an abscess. He literally had half a foot. He had to run with these egg bar shoes with no toe grabs on them. He just had a lot of trouble with the track that day, slipping and sliding. But I mean, he was, I believe anyway, he was certainly the best horse in that race. If he was halfway right, I think he'd have won it. He still only gets beat just a little bit, and like I said, he had half a foot.
Mike, I argue that one of the greatest 4 race runs I've ever seen consecutive from a horse was Arrogate. When you did the Travers, then the Classic, the World Cup, and then the Pegasus World Cup, and then the Dubai World Cup. I kind of want to go through those. One of them specifically, because I saw this video clip one time about the Classic, so we're going to get to that one. But the Travers, that day from the rail, was that the plan? Go to the front? Did you know you were going to do that, or did you just break so well you ended up there?
No, that was the plan. we drew the inside, and of course, a lot of people, he wasn't Arrogate yet at the time, but yeah, I mean, he had a lot of ability, and I know Bob thought a whole lot of him, and I hadn't ridden him yet, but I had watched him, and I'd watched him train. I thought, man, this is a really good horse. And then when we drew the one hole, that was a game plan. I said, look, Bob, I'm going to, he said, see if you can get him on out of there. See if you can make the lead with him. And Bob had two in there, if you remember at the time.
Yep.
Bejarano rode the other one, and man, we were able to jump well, and I gunned him for a good 100 yards. I mean, I rode him pretty hard out of there. But once I got him going forward and he got up to the lead, I mean, he was just, it was just coming so easy to him. I thought, man, this horse is just, and I kept thinking, I know we're going pretty quick, but I said, at some point it's going to take a toll, and it just didn't. I mean, he just kept getting faster and faster and faster and faster. I was like, wow. And of course, he draws away and wins the Travers by, like, I forget how far it was. And I think it's, to this day, still the fastest mile and a quarter ever ran at Saratoga.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a track record.
Yeah.
And then I saw that video, which was, I thought it was one of my favorite, like, 2-minute video clips I've ever seen, is when you were watching the race in the Classic with Bob, and I think his family, I think Jill and Bodie were there, and you were pointing out, and I love to watch it now and, like, show it to people that don't know a lot about racing, and you pointed out that you were hiding basically from Victor, where you had, like, tucked inside, he looked and saw you, and then once he looked, then you tipped outside, because then he didn't know you were coming on his outside. And I thought it was awesome.
Thank you. I think that there's a blimp shot that shows a real good. You could understand it a whole lot better if you'll see that the camera angle from up in the air. Then you can kind of see it. But Victor was just cruising on the lead, on a very comfortable lead with California Chrome, and I didn't want him to see when I was going to make my big run at him. So I kept just positioning myself in places that he couldn't see me, and if he'd look to the left, I'd kind of tip to the right. And vice versa. I just kept doing it all the way until you could see, even heading for home, I was just doing crisscrosses back over and back and forth, and then was able to really get him running and come at him with a full head of steam coming off that turn before he got running. And Arrogate was just a bigger, stronger horse, and he just outstrided him at the end. It's incredible. But he was just starting to get good then, honestly, Jonathan, at that time, though. That race, he come out of the Breeders' Cup Classic, man. It just took him to another level, a really fit and strong horse. So, and of course, we saw what he went on to do after that.
Yeah, I mean, the Pegasus World Cup wasn't even that interesting. I mean, he ran them off their feet, and
he ran this huge. I think it was his Dubai World Cup that showed how good he really was. No other horse, I don't think, he was supposed to win that race, man. He wasn't supposed to win that race. Not after that start, man. We just got totally eliminated leaving there. Look at the gun runner. He never lost again after that race.
No.
Like shouldn't have lost that race. It took a horse like Arrogate to beat him that day. It really did. I mean, he was supposed to win that by himself.
And look, I think that this is I want to definitely talk about that, but I just want to remind everyone that this will lead to the transition into Zenyatta's last race, Mike. But I mean, I know that when I was watching it, I was at Hawthorne for a betting contest, hanging out in this bar area, and when you broke and you were so far back, the Zenyatta Churchill race was just flashing in my eyes of like, oh my God, he's so far back. And did the Zenyatta race impact your decision to just on how you handled what happened in that Dubai World Cup?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. The first words out of my mouth, we can't even say on air, to be honest with you. But then right after that, I said, you know what? She really popped in my head. I said, if she could do it, you can too, man. I was like, just get back in the race little by little. Just get back in there little. Just give him a chance, and little by little, and little by little, he just started gaining confidence. And by halfway down the backside, man, he started to run over horses. I thought, wow, man, now I need to cut a corner here somewhere and save a little bit of ground. And I'm not without a chance to finish well. I still didn't think I'd be able to run gun runner down. But as we passed the 3/8 pole and I was able to cut that corner and then and then tipped back out. And when I got him back out of the kickback, man, he jumped into the bridle. Like I said, you got to be kidding me. I said, not only is he going to run well still, he's going to win this thing. And I actually wanted gearing him down a little. It was just a performance that I'd never seen before. Don't know if I'll ever see it again. It was just incredible, man. It really was. I think he showed how great he really was that day. He might have left it all out on the racetrack that day because he did. When he came back to the States, he just went the same after that. But man, I don't think there was a horse in the world could have beat him that night.
It was outstanding. It was one of the greatest performances I'd seen, because I think you make that point that's very important for everyone to understand, is that he didn't run down some random, Dubai Godolphin horse that they just entered in the race. He didn't run down some turf horse that shouldn't be there. He ran down Gunrunner.
Oh, and you talked to Florent. Florent said, there's no way no one was supposed to run by me. He said, when I headed for home and I asked my horse to run, he just took it to another level. I thought, it's over, man. There's no way no one's going to pass me. And it took a horse like Arrogate to get by him. He was as shocked as I was that someone passed him, and I was as shocked that I passed him. It was just some race that he ran.
Mike, we touched on it a little bit, and we'll go ahead and we'll work backwards. But I know I've told you this before, but for the longest time, my Twitter profile picture was a picture where I grabbed you at Churchill Downs, where I sat at those tables where the riders come right out of the room there, and I showed you that I had Zenyatta tattooed on my arm, and we took a picture of together, and that was my Twitter profile for forever until my hair got longer. I had to change it up a little bit, but she was, I think she was the first horse. She was the first horse that brought me to tears. She was the first horse that, like, I had such an emotional impact on me that I would cry when if I watched the right race, or if I'm in the right mood when she won, or whatever it was. And it's always kind of, even before I got to know you, it's always kind of broken my heart that I've seen interviews, or I saw interviews of you saying that you felt like, you made decisions that got her beat in that last race. And I don't think that was the case at all. I think you trusted her so much that at that point you made every right move. You were just a jump late. Where are you at with that race now?
Well, look, I'll just start out by saying how special she was, and I'm like you. She'd make me cry while I was on her. That's how special she was. She made other trainers and owners cry that were racing against her, and not because she beat them, but that's how special she was. She was, I think she still to this day is like one of the, every time that she ran a race, as I was passing all the other jockeys, I could hear them, like they would holler for her, like, go Zenyatta, go Zenyatta. It was the craziest thing ever. They were huge fans. Everyone was just, she'll go down as being probably one of the most, if not the most special horses that, and not just because I rode her, but that I've ever seen. The whole thing was a show, man. If you weren't there to see it, you just missed it. It's hard to describe, but from her dancing in the paddock, and just her size and how big and beautiful she was, and how she would just pick her head up and tower over horses and look over them as if they were not even there. It was just the whole show was incredible. But as far as that last race goes, I'll always go by, if I say I'll ride the race the same again, then I finish second. So I don't want to do that. Churchill just probably wasn't her most favorite track, to be honest with you. She left there spinning her wheels, kind of fumbling, and it took her forever to get up and get going. And by that time, there were two separate races that were running. There was a whole group in front, and then a second group that was about 10 in front of me. And then the leading group was about 5 or so in front of them. And I don't think she realized she had to run by that second group that was way down there till it was too late, And then it took a horse like Blaine to beat him, which was a really good horse. And not only was he a good horse, he was an exceptional horse at Churchill. I think he finished his career 6 for 6 at Churchill Downs. That was his track, and for her to run as well as she did, to get within a nose of him after being that far back, was probably one of her greatest races she ever ran, and it showed how great she really was.
Yeah, it's one of the things that annoy me that people say about a lot of her races on the synthetic. I'd like to try to remind them or convince them that her best race she ever ran was on the dirt at Churchill. It just so happens that the result was different than the other 19, but she ran huge that day considering the circumstances.
She really did, and just before we headed for home, she got bumped pretty hard, as I was trying to cut a corner and squeeze in between two horses, and I had room as we were going in there, but she's big, and a horse that was stopping kind of wheeled out, and that's when Blaine got through. It kind of wheeled out into my path, and he got through, and it just stopped me for that one really big jump, and it took me a bit to get her going again, and I just wasn't able to make it up. But man, I wasn't gonna blame her. She was my everything, man. It was just so sad that it was. I think what hurt the most, Jonathan, was that I knew it was the last time I was gonna ride her. So if I knew that her career wasn't going to be over, I knew she would have redeemed herself. I knew she would have come back and beat the boys again, and it all would have been okay. But I wasn't going to get that chance. It was it. It was the last time I was going to get on her back. So I certainly wanted to end it with a W, because she deserved that. But I mean, it's crazy how things, it wasn't meant to be, and who knows, I might have just rode off into the sunset with her if she would have retired a winner. I think I might have just left with her and just say that was the last horse I've ever ridden. But it wasn't meant to be, and it lit a fire underneath me that I wanted to come back and do something big. And we come back, I win the Classic the following year with Drosselmeyer, and then we went on to win a Triple Crown with Bob, with Justify and Bob. It was just, if I should have won that day, I might have never rode again.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I talked about, at the top of the show, I talked about how as a fan who with no access, you were the pinnacle for my fandom. It was a lot of because of Zenyatta. It was because of Giacomo. Like I said, that was the first horse that I bought books that night. And you mentioned another one that I think is also important to the story. And I don't know I think I've told you this before, but I was coaching high school football. I was making, $60,000 a year, and everything was great. And I was in Texas, and we came to the Belmont Stakes that year, and I hit a pick 4 that day that ended in Drosselmeyer that paid $84,000. And actually, I've never said this out loud before, but I'm going to say it. That not only did I win that money, and it was great because it was basically my entire salary, but also it was a win that I felt like I could continue to play. But my ex-wife at the time said to me that night when I was heading back, she said, we have some money saved up, we can try to have a kid. And that was the decision that led me into now the most precious thing in my life, which is my son. It was that day after that race with Drosselmeyer winning that Belmont.
Wow, man, that's incredible. I hope you didn't name him Drosselmeyer, though.
No, but you know what though? It's not all because of you, but it is a nice little aside. His middle name is Michael, but
there you go.
That was his grandfather's name as well. But also, Drosselmeyer.
I'm going to say it's for me.
Drosselmeyer helped us out a little bit too. Drosselmeyer helped us out a little bit too. And then it's funny you say that about Zenyatta, that if she would have won, there's a chance that you would have retired with her. But you were hinting at it, but that would have prevented you from getting one of your 2 needed Triple Crowns throughout your career.
Yeah. Man, look, I mean, again, things just work out crazy. I mean, because I honestly, I was really thinking about it, and I might have just done it, just walked away when she walked away. I mean, that's how much she meant to me, especially at the time, and still does. I look, if I had one horse left to ride in my life all over again, and I could pick just one, I think it'd be her. No, I know it would be. It really would. Yeah,
What
it'd be her.
what what was your favorite race of hers? Was it? I mean, obviously the classic was special, and that could definitely be your answer. But I just there's some of them might might have a different effect on you. Was that your favorite race of hers?
Yeah, it would have to be. It was just, eh, I mean, it was a day that I don't know if you were there that afternoon, but it was the day the ground shook in California, and it wasn't because of an earthquake. That's how much the people after the race were just still like 20 minutes after the race was over, we're still jumping up and down and just screaming. And I rode her all the way back, and I rode her all the way back to the other end of the grandstand so everyone could see her, and then rode her all the way back afterwards. And it was just crazy. I've never seen nothing like that before, never seen nothing like that since. And don't know if I ever will, but you could literally feel the ground shaking. And I mean, even Bob Baffert told me once, he goes, man, I was bawling like a little kid. And he had a horse from the race, I mean, and I saw other trainers and other owners just crying, just they were so excited about her. And it was just, that would definitely have to be the race.
I obviously that was special and it was exciting, and but I my weird one is the 2010 Vanity where you ran down Zardana. I thought you were beat. It felt like you were beat.
Yeah, that was for a moment there, but she got away with such easy fractions. I mean, there was a couple of times. I mean, so you're asking her to. I think there was one race. I think Jonathan, she finished the last quarter of a mile in 21 and change, which is unheard of, man. That's how fast she had to come home to win, because everyone would just there would be no pace in the race, and she knew she'd be so way back there, and everyone would just go as slow as they could and try and make it. A sprint from the quarter pole to the wire, but she had such a huge stride, and a lot of those noses, believe it or not, were about the easiest nose you could have ever had in your life. I mean, she actually they even though the margin of victory was so short, I felt like she won by 10. I mean, I felt like she could have at any time, any place, it's like she knew where the wire was, man. She would she would make it as close as she could sometimes, but she was just playing. She really was. I mean, there was some races where you thought, "Oh, wow, why'd you make it that close?" I said, like, if you were on her, you wouldn't feel that way. She gave you so much confidence. Like I said, I felt like I was 10 in front, and I only won by a nose. Yeah, it's good. I never had another horse make you feel that way. It's strange. She was just different.
What do you think she would have done on the grass, Mike?
She's bred for it, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Especially if she'd have run at a big like a Belmont grass with a bigger with the bigger turns and everything. Man, there's no telling what she'd have done. I mean, look what she did on synthetic dirt, anything she ran over. And she's bred for grass, so there's no telling. There's no telling. She might have been the kind of filly that could have won the Arc or something like that.
Mike, I had Steve Asmussen on, and I asked him if he wishes that Rachel and her would have got to run against each other, and he said absolutely. And he didn't say it with like oh, we would have beat her. He didn't say it like that. He was just saying he wishes that as a fan that he would have had a chance to see that.
Oh, that would have been great, man, to see. It would have been they were supposed to do it in Oaklawn. They're supposed to meet there, and I don't know if Rachel come up with something. I forget what it was, but she couldn't run in it. But that was going to be some race, man. It would have been incredible to watch, because at a mile eighth you would think that probably Rachel would have an advantage anything shorter than a mile and eighth, and right a mile and eighth was probably the place where you could kind of meet in the middle. Going a mile and a quarter, you'd probably give you the advantage, of course, to Zenyatta, but because of the running style and the way she would finish. So it would have been fun to see, but they were just both monsters, man. They really were. They were great fillies to have. I think they really kick-started our sport again. They both did.
Mike, could you see where you were going in the Preakness on Justify?
Not, I don't think people realize how far out that Good Magic had me. You know, he pushed me a good ways out, and I'm thinking to myself, you know, that was the Preakness is a race that I was probably the most nervous at. You would have thought it would have been the Belmont after you winning the Preakness, but you know, when I won the when I won the Derby, I mean, we knew going in. Look, this is to me, he was just by far the most talented 3-year-old going into the Derby. I said he can win. If I just break good, he should win this race. And he's the kind of horse that if I could win this race, he could win all three. You know, so after he won the Derby, and you know, the Derby takes a lot out of a horse sometimes. You know, and he'd only run what 3 times, man, and now he ran that hard in the Derby, and I'm thinking, man, I got to win this Preakness. Without doing too much, you know, and I can't squeeze him twice because then but he won't have anything left for the Belmont, and that's why the margin of victory was closer than what it was. If I wanted to take the race to him down the backside, I could have just went ahead and asked him to run and push that horse back on over and just open on up, you know, and he'd have won by, you know, of course, easier than what he won by. But I just kind of let him keep taking me out there, just because I didn't want to have to make him run so hard. And then once I put him away, I just kind of was hand riding him in, and then out of the clouds, that, you know, Horse of Lucas's ran some race, man. He it was a little closer than I was wanting, but it was still kind of planned. I know no one could see anything, and of course, once we hit the fog, you know, we hit the fog again past the wire, and he saw that other horse. He took on off again. He wasn't going to let him by, you know. So, but you couldn't see that. So when I came back, Bob was like, "I guess that's it, huh, man? He can't go no further. I think he's had it, man." I said, "What are you talking about, man?" I said, he did that easy. He goes, "Well, I couldn't see anything." I said, "Oh no, he wasn't going to let him by if we went around again. Trust me." And so a lot of people kind of going into the Belmont weren't sure if he was going to get the 1.5 miles, you know. But actually, that's where I was the most confident, because I thought all along that Belmont would probably be his the track that would suit him even better, as big as he was, you know, those big old turns, and I just thought that the track would suit him, and of course he won pretty handy that day. So, but the race that I was the most nervous at was I would have to say was the Preakness. Because once I got through the Preakness, man, I wasn't going to let the Triple Crown thing get to me. I already prayed about it, man. I was determined to smile all the way. You can even see me in the post parade, man. I'm just smiling away like I'd already won it. I wasn't going to let that pressure get to me.
Mike, you've won, I think, 27 Breeders' Cup races, the most of any other rider. What are some of them? And I'm not saying which one's more important. I'm just saying, you know, when someone asks you the question that I'm going to ask you, what are some of them, a handful of them, that really stick out to you, those wins?
My first one with Lure, I owe him all the Lure. Because of him, and not only did he win my first one, he won my second one. He came right back and win again. You know, so I kind of credit a lot of my Breeders' Cup success to Lure, because he kind of kicked it all off, man. You know, that they really get me going, but getting a chance to man, it's so mean. I've been so blessed in the Breeders' Cup, man. I could tell you a story about each and every one of them, and that's a whole other show, man. You know, even at Hollywood Park when I picked up Skip Away, man, for the Classic, you know, and at last minute, and Sonny had to put up 480,000 to run in. Yeah, you talk about, and then we drew the one hole, man. You talk about the pressure, man. Here's a guy put up $500,000 to run this horse, and you draw the one hole, and you know everyone's looking for you. And for him to run the way he ran that day was pretty incredible as well. I don't know if you remember that Classic at Hollywood Park, but if you ever get a chance, go back and watch that race. And I let him run early, man, and he just took it to him. And he was a horse that I had never ridden, but I of course watched him run a lot. And again, talking about the stamina thing, when you let a horse with a high cruising speed like that, I knew that if I let him run early, that he could keep running, man, and he'd run some numbers, and he would just run them off their feet, and that's kind of what I did. And I'm glad it worked out. Otherwise, I think people would have thought, why would you move at the 3/4 pole like that, man? You'll have to go back and watch the race to understand it.
Did you think that you won with Songbird?
Yeah, but we stood up and I saw Gary pump his fist like he thought he won. I thought, man, my poor buddy's going to get embarrassed when they put my number up. I said, poor guy, man. I said, oh man, and then we come back and his number was up. I said, what the heck? But yeah, I know I was in front the jump before, and I felt like I was in front the jump after, but somehow he snuck that in between jump away from me, man. I don't know how it happened, but it happened, man.
Are photos easier for you guys to tell while you're on? Are they not as close?
No,
Are they hard?
no, not all the time. And sometimes you think you won and you don't. You're like, what? I don't. Yeah, it's just this. I guess because you want it so bad, your mind won't let you think you didn't get up or they got you. You just. I think because you want it so bad, you just think you won. But with Zenyatta, I could tell she was so big that I was always kind of towering over her most of the time, and you could see it. It was easy for her, but she was the only one that I could really tell whenever I'd make it so close that she got it. She got it easy. But I thought with Songbird, I thought I won. I still feel like I won, to be honest with you, Johnny, because she ran too good to lose. I don't think there was a loser in that race. I think they both won. I just didn't get paid, and Gary got paid, so I make him buy every time we go eat. We go out and eat dinner. I said, "Oh, that's what's up. Is this on beholder?" I said, "All right, man."
Mike, what's the you've ridden I think you've ridden a lot of people's dream horses. A couple horses that you wish you would have had a chance to ride, that you would have loved to get a leg up on.
I'd love to ridden Easy Goer. I'm a huge Pat Day fan, and it was a big fan of him, watching him ride him. And I just thought, man, I bet it's so fun to ride that horse, man. So I've always wanted to ride Easy Goer. I would have loved to have ridden Sunday Silence as well. I would have loved to have ridden, got that chance to ride Spin the Buck. Not Spin the Buck, Spectacular Bid. But hell, I'd take Spin the Buck too. Ali Sheba was another horse that I got on in the morning a few times, and just I thought I'd love to ride him in a race one time. And they're just great horses. They're fun to watch and fun to watch ride. I'd love to have ridden Ruffian once. I've been blessed to have ridden a lot of great fillies. I would have liked to see what she felt like,
Oh, absolutely, Mike. Who's the one that got away? Who's the almost mount? Who's the I was supposed to be on that one? That the old Leonardo DiCaprio was supposed to be in this movie. Who was yours?
Well, it would have been Cigar, but I don't know if I would have changed it, even if I had a chance again, because I was riding Holy Bull. But I won the first race of Cigar's win streak, and the reason I didn't ride him back, I rode a horse called Devil Is Due instead of him, and Jerry. That's when Jerry picked him up, and then of course never took off him. But I did that knowing that I was going to take off Cigar the race after that anyway, because they're going to run against each other, and I wasn't taking off Holy Bull by no means. And that was of course a race that Holy Bull got hurt in. So, but I guess Cigar would be. I mean, because they just, it was such a famous run that he went on. It would have been pretty cool to be a part of, but I still would have kept it the same. And look, he might not have run for me like he did Jerry, but when I won that allowance race on him before the first race of his winning streak, man, I thought to myself, wow, I mean, he could have won that race by 20 if I wanted to. I thought, man, this is some horse. I'm gonna have trouble beating him. With Holy Bull's gonna have to run his race to beat him, and who knows what would happen? No one will ever know,
Mike, the best horse that people forget about that you rode? You know, obviously they know the Zenyatas, the Justifies, the Songbirds.
By far, Shared Belief.
That was my guess. That's who I was going to guess you were going to say.
Oh, let me tell you something, man. Jonathan, that horse should be undefeated. He should have gone undefeated. He would have won. He would have won the Breeders' Cup Classic. There's not a doubt in my mind if he doesn't get eliminated. Not once, not twice, but 3 times he got eliminated and still came back and almost wins it. I mean, that horse was incredible, man. He really was and I beat California Chrome horses like that. Like, I mean, with ease. I mean, he was that good. You know, the only thing that hurt him was that one race, and then of course his last race that he got to run in when he broke his pelvis. You know, he cracked his pelvis. So that horse should have retired unbeaten.
Yeah, I predicted that was who you were going to say. He was outstanding.
Yeah, he really was, man. He deserves he deserves to be in the Hall. I mean, he was good enough. He deserves to be in the Hall of Fame.
Well, Mike, what's next for you? You're gonna Del Mar this summer. You're gonna stick around. I love that. I love to hear that. I mean, I feel like it's a race. It's a race to see who doesn't retire first between you and Johnny.
Yeah, he's another one of my brothers. Yeah. I feel too good, man. I feel too good right now to even think about it. I honestly do. I just before I got on the show here with you, I was in the gym working out and telling my personal trainer how good I feel. I rode 6 yesterday, and although I didn't win one, when I got to the 6th one, I was like, man, can we start all over again? I'm just now really starting to feel good. Feeling great, man. So there's a lot of great babies, you know, coming around this year. I hope I can get on a few of them and see what happens, man. I want to give it a really strong year. I want to finish this year out good and then give next year all I got and see where it takes me.
Mike, is there one race? I actually did this. It was actually funny. I did this with Saul Kuman the other day. I asked him if there's a grade 1 he hasn't won, a big grade 1 he hasn't won, and it took us a while. Million. That's the one you want. That's you.
Yeah, it's always been the Arlington Million, man. I haven't got very, very many opportunities in it. I've only ridden it like 4 times. I've been second twice, but I've never. You know, Chicago. When I was back there, I was young. You know, when I was riding Chicago back in the day, and that was the first $1 million race we had in the United States. Besides the All-American for quarter horses, but for thoroughbreds, that was the first $1 million race there was, and I got to, you know, watch it several times, you know, riding around Chicago, and always wanted to win the Arlington Million. Now I never get that chance. I mean, I guess you could win it at Churchill, but it wouldn't be, you know, it wouldn't be the same.
No, it wouldn't be the same. Close. Of your 27,
I mean, I'll still take it.
Yeah, of your 27 Breeders' Cup wins, have you won all 14 of them?
Yeah, you know, I win all of them.
I guess the turf. Well, you won the turf sprint or the.
Man,
I guess the juvenile turf sprint, right?
Yeah, those I haven't won, but
yeah.
But the turf sprint I went back to back with Misdirection.
Yeah.
But when there used to be 7 originals, you know. That was you know, the Breeders' Cup, you know, back in the day used to be 7 till it, you know, it turned into, of course, 2 days of it now. But I was always proud to say that when I caught Jerry, I caught him by winning 7 I caught him by winning one of the 7 originals. I didn't pass him by winning one of the new ones until afterwards. So I always liked that. At least I did it with the originals, you know. Because now you got so many of them, somebody's gonna catch me pretty soon one of these days.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, we'll see.
I'm gonna try to add a few more to it.
Of course,
before it happens, but we'll see. I don't know. We'll see. We're gonna give it my best.
Yeah, I mean, we were doing the math this summer on IRAD. You know, I mean, obviously there's a lot of other guys, but IRAD's rolling right now that could beat Johnny's 1,000 wins at Saratoga, and you know, I think IRAD can do it in I think if he keeps up to his pace, he can do it in maybe 6, 7 years, 8 years.
Yeah, I mean, he rides so many horses as well, you know. So But yeah, especially with the Breeders' Cup now. I mean, there's quite a few of them now. So I mean, if you're fortunate enough to be riding them, you're gonna have a shot at it.
Well, Mike, I like I told you at the top, and I told you in the middle. This is an honor to have you on. It's an honor to call you a friend, and I want to see you keep riding. I never thought about it, but just like I'm glad it's not coming anytime soon. But I do think that it'll be a sad day for me when you retire. So you just stay healthy and you keep rolling.
Amen, man. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. It's always great talking to you, and hopefully I'll see you in person soon, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to get to Santa Anita soon. I'm
Come out, stay with us.
Yeah, no, we gotta. Hopefully, you'll come up this summer again. We've had some fun dinners at Salivo, in Saratoga, and then we're definitely coming for the Breeders' Cup. Definitely coming for the Breeders' Cup.
Well, you got a place to stay, man. You let me know.
Mike, I appreciate you so much for everything you've done for the game and for me personally too. Like I said, there's about three horses that you rode that made a huge deal, and you're actually tattooed on my arm. I showed you that. Palace Malice,
yeah,
was the only Triple Crown race my father and I got to see together, and it was Palace Malice. You just keep showing up. You keep showing up.
Well, that's why we're meant to be friends, man.
Mike, I appreciate the time. Safe trips around there, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much, man. God bless.
All right, Mike, I appreciate it, man. That was awesome.
Oh, you got it, buddy.
Man, that was a ton of fun. It's still surreal to me. I can go to dinner with Chad or send a text message to Brad Cox or sit on a cart with Tom Durkin, and those are all really cool things for someone who is truly a fan of this game first. But man, talking to Mike Smith for an hour and change just hits different for a guy who has him tattooed on his arm because of Drosselmeyer that you heard. I've never said that out loud before. Because of Giacomo, because of Zenyatta, and it was a ton of fun, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Want to thank our friends at Qatar Racing for supporting JK+1. Also, I hope that he got you in the Derby mood, because you got some past performances you need to be looking at. Make sure you're supporting some of the cool wagers that they're doing as well. This is not an ad. I love the 2-day pick six that they do, all grade ones for Derby weekend. So make sure you're getting involved there, and make sure that the thing I got out of this is trainers. If you're listening to this, is keep Mikey on horses. He's got to get that second Triple Crown and that third Derby before he retires, and we want to keep him riding as long as possible. I hope everyone enjoyed this episode. I want to thank everyone at In the Money Media. Thank you, PTF. Thank you, Drew. Thank you to Maggie, Acacia, Matt Bernier, Spencer, Billy, Michelle, all the shows on the network. I feel like I'm always forgetting someone, but whatever. I go blank. But most of all, I want to thank Muggsy, the handicapping Labrador. We love you, and we will miss you coming down the stairs in the middle of our shows, or walking into the kitchen on the little house on the east side. May you win all your Derby photos.
I need to know everything, who and the what and the where, I need everything. Trust me, I hear what you're saying, but act like it's new what you're telling me. I'm curious, George, I hop in the Porsche, it's 5 and a horse, I'm ready for war, I'm coming for throats, to turn to a ghost, I need to know everything. Now you be surprised at the info you get is by letting them talk, so I'm letting them talk.